Hello, class. Today we're going to be learning a bunch of important vocabulary terms um, for our geometric shapes in order for us to um, extend our learning about it and understand um, how to use them, when to use them, what to say. So we're going to go over some things that are pretty important for um, geometric shapes. The first thing, one of the most common and easiest to remember, is this little guy right here. This little guy is called a point. We usually give it it usually has a letter to go with it. So if this point is labeled A, we would say it is point A. It has no lines attached to it, and it's just a point in space. It's going to be part of our line segments and our lines and our rays and angles as well. So moving on from points, we have something called a line segment. Now, a line segment has two endpoints. I'm pointing to them now. And stops. It doesn't go infinitely in one direction. It stops. So it starts in one point and ends at another point. So I labeled them A, B. This is line segment A, B. It's different than a line. That's why it's called a segment, is that it stops. So it has two endpoints. Then the next one that's very similar, something that we're all familiar with, is that little guy right there. And this is just called a line. We could still call it AB. But it has no endpoints. Because it has no endpoints, it goes on forever in both directions, left and right. So there's no really starting or stopping point. It just goes on forever in both ways. And then one of the last, not shapes, but last kind of vocabulary term that we need to know, something that we went over a little bit yesterday, is a ray. And rays are really important because they are what make up our angles. An array has an endpoint and goes on forever in one direction. So you're stopping here. That's your endpoint, but then you go on forever in one direction. So this is going to be called a ray, and it has one endpoint, but goes on forever in one direction. Doesn't have to be right. It could be a left. It could be up. It could be down. But that is a ray. It only has one endpoint. It's the difference between a line, or a line segment. It has one endpoint and then shoots off into a different direction. We still call it AB, but it's a ray AB. These, I'm going to highlight this in purple now. These are what you would see when they're labeled. So for ray AB, it would just be AB on top of a ray. For line AB, it would be AB on top of a line. For line segment AB, remember with line segments we have two endpoints. It stops. And then point would be just be one endpoint. All right, so again, to sum up, point is just a point in space. You can give it any name, whatever letter it comes with. Line segment has two endpoints. It starts with an endpoint and then goes on for a while, but then has to end with another endpoint. It does not go on forever. The arrows mean that they would be going on infinitely in one direction or both directions. The line here has arrows pointing in both directions, meaning it's going to go on forever in both left and right hand side. And then ray has to start with an endpoint and then moves on forever in one direction. Okay, I'm going to move on down here now because we have a couple more vocabulary terms to go over. And we're basically going to be using rays because now we're going to be creating our angles. So yesterday we learned and practiced with something that's called a right angle. Right angles form a 90-degree angle using two rays. So you can kind of consider this point right here, and then this going on forever, and this going on forever. That is two rays connected to each other to form an angle. So if we were saying this right angle would be angle ABC. Right angles always form 90-degree angles, and it tells you that this thing right here, that square is going to note that that is 90 degrees and can be classified as a right angle. There are three more angles that we need to talk about that are different than a right angle. The first one I'm going to start with is an acute angle. So I'm going to draw my endpoint here. I'm going to go off in one direction, and then I'm going to go off in another direction. Two rays forming an angle, but you can tell the difference between the right angle and this angle is that the one in purple is crouched over a little more. It looks like it's moving more towards the other ray. And this angle that's right here, that angle looks a lot less of an angle than the right angle. It's a lot less open. It's more closed. This is what we call an acute angle. And it is less than 90 degrees. And so since it's less than 90 degrees, it could be from 1 degree all the way to 89 degrees. But since a 90-degree angle is a right angle, once it gets to 90, you have to classify it as a right angle. So acute angles are less than 90 degrees. And I kind of remember one of the ways to remember an acute angle is two ways, I guess, is that it has a lot less letters than the other type of angle that's going to be larger than 90 degrees. And usually when you think of something cute, it's really small, like a kitten or a puppy. So that's why that word cute, less than 90 degrees, that's two ways that I have remembered how to classify an acute angle. So moving on from acute, we are going to have another type of angle. And you can tell with this one, it's opening up. The angle is a lot larger and looks like it's leaning back instead of leaning forward. This one is called an obtuse angle. And that is anywhere from 91 degrees all the way to 179 degrees. And you'll learn why we stop at 179 just in a little bit. An obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees. And when I think of obtuse, I think of a larger person. The word obtuse sounds sounds like if someone is bigger than other people. That's kind of how I remember what an obtuse angle is. It's going to be larger. I always tell my kids, think of Mr. K with the large belly. Obtuse angle is going to be larger than 90 degrees. And the last angle that we need to concern ourselves with, probably the easiest angle to remember, but remember it has it has one endpoint made up of two rays, that one endpoint in the middle, but it's a straight angle. It goes on forever from those rays. So this is going to be a straight angle. And this is 180 degrees. And it's two rays formed going in opposite directions infinitely. Remember, a right angle, 90 degrees, always with a square in the angle. The acute angle, very cute, very small, less than 90 degrees. It can be between 1 and 89 degrees on a protractor. Obtuse angles, larger than 90 degrees, anywhere from 91 to 179. And then a straight angle always being 180 degrees. Always remember that angles are made up of two rays. And always remember about your points, line segments, lines, and rays. Thank you for joining me today.